And we're just a few hours away from another public hearing focused on January 6th. Lawmakers will discuss how former President Trump allegedly tried to use the Justice Department to bolster his attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Three top officials who led the department near the end of the Trump administration will testify. CBS News legal contributor Rebecca Roiphe joins us now with more on this. Rebecca, welcome. Great to have you. Let's just start with the basics here. Walk us through what, if any, jurisdiction a president has over the Justice Department, because it's not zero.
Right. It's a very complicated issue because technically, of course, the Department of Justice is within the executive branch and the president is the chief executive officer, the head of the executive branch. Yet, historically, and from very important precedent, the Department of Justice is traditionally independent of the president. So the president doesn't try to exert control over individual decisions that are made within the Department of Justice.
But are there legal ramifications if, say, a former president or someone else has been found to be trying to influence the Justice Department? I mean, it might be unethical, but is it illegal?
You know, that is the key question here. It's really hard to know what the repercussions are here because it is a clear violation of the principles of democratic government, yet it isn't clearly articulated in any legal standard. So if there is some kind of legal repercussions, it would have to be some sort of obstruction of justice charge. But there is a clear defense here, of course, that the president can claim I have absolute power over the Department of Justice. Now, that's controversial, and many people believe that's not true, but he would certainly try to make that claim.
Because you know what I'm thinking of right now, Rebecca, and it's one of the cases that the Supreme Court is sort of looking into. It has to do with immigration and what a charge of the state is. And it's a policy that was put in place by the previous administration, the Trump administration. This administration instructed the Justice Department not to fight in favor of it, right? Not to argue it. So in that way, the administration has influence over the Justice Department, can tell them what cases to work on and what cases to abandon.
So it is also complicated in that it's different with civil cases and with criminal cases. And that is, again, something that's sort of written into soft law, our kind of traditions and norms that especially prosecutions, the individual decisions in prosecutions are made by the chief prosecutor, not by the chief executive official. And the reason why that is because we want the rule of law to prevail. We don't want political decisions to infiltrate those key important criminal court decisions because somebody's liberty is at stake. And so it's different in that regard.
It sounds like there is a gray area, it's muddy, and so despite the former president's claims of what he has the authority to do, until and unless there is a legal decision made, it's an unanswered question.
It's a completely unanswered question, uncharted territory. And there have been so many of those with regard to the Trump administration because of his willingness to push these norms and bounds that have previously been just accepted.
And to your point, we should note the Department of Justice has not issued criminal charges in connection with January 6th, these hearings yet. But would today's hearings be even more complicated should there be a link to federal charges due to this potential conflict of interest? Because you have people testifying that were formerly leading the DOJ.
Right. I mean, it could be complicated, but they are no longer there. And there is a new administration and a new Department of Justice. And so I think Merrick Garland, who's the Attorney General now, will certainly take into account these facts that are coming out through the January 6 hearings and determine what he needs to do by looking at those facts and the law that's present.
And can I ask, following up on that, because every president of both parties have used their influence to their max potential, do we need some decisions on this front? Do we need the Supreme Court or legal precedent to be set so there is barriers?
Well, you know, that's a very good question as well. And it's complicated also because we want accountability. It would be problematic if we had a Department of Justice, prosecutors who are just running amok, doing what they wanted to do. So we need some accountability, somebody who could be held responsible if the Department of Justice does something wrong. Yet we want that person to be hands off and not make determinations in individual cases. So how you would write that into either a statute or decisional law is very complicated. But I would say the answer to your short answer to your question is yes, it would be great if there were some more clarity coming in some way with regard to this, because obviously those soft norms have not done the job.
I want to ask you a question about what we're probably going to hear about today in the hearing. Jeffrey Clark. So he is the individual that the former president wanted to replace, put in place of Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen. Jeffrey Rosen wasn't exactly complying with this whole scheme, and so the president was like, well, how about we put in this other Jeffrey? Who's going to notice two Jeffreys? But on a sort of more serious note, could he face any criminal charges for his role in the president's sort of scheme to disregard the 2020 election outcome?
You know, he could. I mean, what we're looking at here, and I think has been particularly effective in the January 6th hearings so far, is the establishment of sort of a three-front conspiracy to overturn the will of the people and the election. And he's a key player in this one particular front. So could he face charges? I think he could, in the same way that all of the players could. But what will ultimately happen here, again, rests with the Department of Justice.
Okay, Rebecca, I'm so glad you are here.